I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the knot of my tie for what felt like the 100th time. The suit felt stiff, a borrowed skin that didn't quite fit the man underneath. At 46, my face was a map of a life well lived, etched with laugh lines around my eyes and a deeper, more profound sorrow around my mouth. But today the joy was winning. My son Jacob was getting married tomorrow. My son. The boy I'd raised from the ground up, the one who'd weathered the storm with me after his mother's death, was now a man embarking on his own life. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of frantic preparations, phone calls, emails, endless meetings with caterers and florists. Most of it had been handled by Sophia, my wonderful wife, who had taken charge with a grace I couldn't have mustered. She was a godsend, a warm, steady presence who had brought light back into my life when I was sure I was destined to live in the shadows. But her parents, the Millers, were a different story. They were a storm on the horizon, a constant, low-grade pressure that made me feel like I was holding my breath. Mr. Miller, a man whose wealth was only surpassed by his arrogance, and his wife, a woman who treated every interaction as a social transaction, saw me as an obstacle. I wasn't one of them. I was a mechanic, a man who worked with his hands, a man who had scraped by to provide for his son. In their eyes, I was a stain on their perfect family portrait. They had never said it outright, but their every gesture, every pointed silence, screamed their disapproval. Today was the rehearsal dinner, a quiet affair at a beautiful rustic lodge just outside of town. It was supposed to be a calm prelude to the main event, a chance for the two families to come together. I was looking forward to seeing Jacob and his fiancée, Olivia, a smart, kind young woman who fit into our lives with an ease that felt like fate. But as I walked into the lodge, the air immediately felt heavier. The Millers were already there, holding court. Sophia's mother, Eleanor, caught my eye from across the room. Her smile was a tight, controlled thing, a porcelain mask of politeness. Mr. Miller, Harold, simply nodded, his eyes sweeping over my suit as if trying to find a flaw. He found none. The suit was expensive, a gift from Sophia. It was a detail I knew would irk him. I went to Sophia and kissed her cheek. "You look beautiful," I whispered. She was wearing a simple blue dress that made her eyes sparkle. "You don't look so bad yourself, my love," she replied, her hand reaching for mine, a silent gesture of solidarity. She knew the tension. She felt it too. The dinner started off politely enough. We talked about the weather, about the venue, about the small details of the wedding. Jacob and Olivia were a picture of happiness, their laughter ringing out, a perfect counterpoint to the quiet malice that hung in the air. But then, as dessert was being served, Harold leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "So, Ethan," he said, his eyes fixed on mine, "Jacob tells me he's going to be the CEO of a company one day. That's a good ambition to have. A man needs to provide for his family." It was a loaded statement, a jab at my own life's work. I smiled, refusing to take the bait. "He's a great kid, Harold. He'll do whatever he sets his mind to." "Yes, well," Eleanor interjected, her voice dripping with passive aggression. "It's a shame he didn't have a father who could teach him about business, one who could have set him up for success." My jaw tightened. I felt Sophia's hand squeeze mine under the table. "I taught him what was important," I said, my voice steady. "I taught him how to be a good man." A tense silence fell over the table. Jacob, sensing the shift, changed the subject, but the damage was done. The air was thick with unspoken resentment. I found myself thinking about Lily, a ghost in my life that no one at this table knew about. Lily was the daughter of my best friend, Mark, who had passed away unexpectedly years ago. He had been a single dad, and his last request to me had been to look after her. I had adopted her, given her a home, a life. She was an adult now, a quiet, brilliant young woman living a life of her own, but she was still my daughter. The Millers had no idea she existed. I had kept that part of my life private, a story too complicated and personal to share with a family that judged my every move. After dinner, as the families mingled, the tension didn't dissipate. Harold cornered me by the bar. "You know, Ethan, it's a great thing you're marrying my daughter. She's a good woman. She deserves the best." "I know that, Harold," I said, my voice low, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to give her that. He scoffed. You? With what? A garage and a half-empty bank account? My daughter deserves more than your meager existence. That was it. The dam broke. I had taken their insults about my work, about my life, but I wouldn't let him insult my love for Sophia. My meager existence is a life I built with my own 2 hands, I said, my voice rising slightly. It's a life built on love and integrity, things you wouldn't know anything about. Harold's face turned red. Before he could respond, Eleanor was at his side, her hand on his arm. Harold, dear, don't cause a scene. It's a wedding, not a battlefield. She looked at me, a cold fire in her eyes. Some secrets are best left buried, Ethan. We wouldn't want anything to spoil this beautiful day, now would we? The words hung in the air, a thinly veiled threat. A shiver ran down my spine. Had they found out about Lily? It was impossible. No one knew. I had been so careful. As I walked away, I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. The beautiful sunny day I had envisioned for my son's wedding suddenly felt overcast, the first drop of a gathering storm. The night before the wedding was a restless one. Eleanor Miller's words echoed in my mind, a chilling whisper in the dark. Some secrets are best left buried. I tossed and turned, replaying the conversation in my head. Had they discovered something? Was it just a generic threat, a tactic to unnerve me, or did they know about Lily? I got out of bed and walked to the window, looking out at the silent, sleeping street. The moon cast a pale glow on the pavement, and I felt an overwhelming sense of unease. Lily was a part of my life I held close to my heart. She was the quiet legacy of a friendship, a promise I had kept to a dying man. Her existence had nothing to do with Sophia or the Millers, and yet the thought of them using her against me felt like a violation. The morning arrived, grey and misty, a reflection of my own mood. I tried to shake it off. Today was for Jacob. I had to focus on him, on the joy of the day. As I got dressed, I felt a familiar pang of nostalgia. I remembered holding Jacob in my arms for the first time, a tiny, helpless bundle. I remembered the day his mother passed, the world turning to ash, and the promise I made to her that I would be enough for him. I had been. We had been through everything together. This wedding was a testament to our strength, to our bond. The ceremony was held at a beautiful botanical garden. Rows of white chairs were set up on a manicured lawn, framed by blooming flowers. It was a perfect setting, a scene straight out of a fairy tale. As a man, I'd never been one for grand gestures or extravagant displays, but I had to admit the sight of it all took my breath away. But as I greeted the first guests, I felt a change in the atmosphere. The usual wedding chatter, a mix of hellos and well-wishes, was punctuated by odd, lingering looks. Whispers died down as I approached, and people's eyes seemed to flick from me to Sophia, and back again. I saw a few of Sophia's cousins huddled together, their heads bent in a conspiratorial huddle. One of them, a woman named Carol, looked up, and her smile faltered when she saw me. She quickly turned away. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. This wasn't my imagination. Something was wrong. I spotted Sophia across the lawn, talking to her mother. Eleanor had a strange, triumphant look on her face, a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes. When she saw me looking, she quickly composed herself, but the damage was done. My heart hammered against my ribs. They had done it. They had found out, and they were telling people. I walked over to Sophia, my mind reeling. "Sophia, what's going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "People are acting strange." Sophia's face was pale. She squeezed my hand, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and anger. "My mother, she told them about Lily. She's twisting the story, Ethan. She's telling people that Lily is our love child, a secret you've been hiding." The words hit me like a physical blow. The world tilted on its axis. My head swam. But why?" I stammered. "Why would she do that?" "She says it's because you're a liar," Sophia said, her voice shaking. She said you were a fraud, that you hid a child from me, that you're not the man I think you are. My blood ran cold. The sheer malice of it, the calculated cruelty, was breathtaking. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to destroy my marriage, to make me an outcast on my son's wedding day. I looked at Eleanor, who was now smiling at me, a triumphant, venomous smile. "Eleanor," I said, my voice dangerously low, "how could you? How could you do something so cruel?" She didn't flinch. "I'm just protecting my daughter, Ethan. It's my duty to expose the truth. You lied to us. You lied to Sophia. You hid a child from her. What kind of man does that?" "I didn't hide anything from Sophia," I roared. "Lily is my friend's daughter. He passed away and I promised him I would take care of her. It's a completely different situation." "That's a convenient story, isn't it?" Harold scoffed, stepping out from behind his wife. "A secret child, a man with a past. It's not a good look, Ethan. Not for a man marrying into our family." The lies felt like a physical weight, pressing down on me. I looked at Sophia, her face a mask of conflict. She believed me, I knew she did. But the public humiliation was a different kind of burden. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by our raised voices. Their stares were 1,000 tiny needles, pricking at my dignity. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Jacob. His face was a thundercloud of anger and confusion. "Dad, what's going on? I heard a rumor." I felt my heart break for him. This was supposed to be his day. The happiest day of his life, and my in-laws were turning it into a spectacle. "They're lying, son," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "They're spreading a lie about a girl named Lily. They're saying she's my secret love child." Jacob's eyes darted from me to the Millers. His gaze settled on Eleanor, and for the first time I saw the true measure of his character. The boy I had raised was now a man, and he was not going to stand for this. "What?" he said, his voice laced with venom. "Are you kidding me? A secret child? What the hell is wrong with you?" Harold stepped forward, a patronizing smile on his face. "Calm down, Jacob. This is a family matter. We're just trying to expose the truth." "The truth?" Jacob's voice was a low growl. "The truth is you're a couple of manipulative, heartless people who are trying to ruin my father's reputation on my wedding day. Get away from him." A wave of relief washed over me. My son. He was standing up for me. It was all I had ever wanted, all I had ever hoped for. But the Millers weren't done, not by a long shot. "You're making a scene, Ethan," Harold said, his voice a low threat. "This is not the kind of behavior we want at this wedding. You should leave." The words were a dagger to my heart. Leave? On my son's wedding day. It was a low blow, even for them. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was going to fight for my name, for my family, and for the right to be here. The air was electric with tension. The whispered rumors had now become a public spectacle. The Millers, emboldened by the attention, stood with a smug sense of righteousness, as if they were performing a civic duty by exposing my supposed secret. The small crowd around us grew, a silent, curious audience to the unfolding drama. "Leave," I repeated, the word tasting like ash on my tongue. "Harold, you can't be serious. This is my son's wedding. I'm not going anywhere." "You're a disgrace," Eleanor spat, her porcelain mask of politeness finally shattered. "A liar and a cheat. You have no business being here." Jacob stepped in front of me, his body a shield. "Mom, Dad, this has to stop. Right now. You are ruining my wedding." "We're protecting you, son," Harold said, his voice dropping to a theatrical, condescending tone. "You don't want to start your marriage with a lie hanging over your head. We're telling you the truth about your father." My stomach churned with a mix of fury and disgust. They were trying to manipulate Jacob, to turn him against me. I couldn't let that happen. "Jacob, please," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Let me handle this." I stepped around him and faced the Millers directly. "Eleanor, Harold, what you're doing is despicable. Lily is not my love child. She is the daughter of my best friend who passed away. He asked me to look after her, and I made a promise to him. I adopted her legally years ago. I didn't hide it from Sophia. I just didn't see the need to share the details of a painful time in my life with people who had nothing to do with it. This is a private matter, and you have no right to twist it into a public spectacle. My words were met with a scoff from Harold. A convenient story, he repeated. Where is this girl, then? Why isn't she here? She's an adult, I said, my voice rising. She lives her own life. She's a brilliant, wonderful young woman, and she has nothing to do with this, the crowd murmured. Some of them looked sympathetic, others still skeptical. The Millers had sown the seeds of doubt, and it was now bearing poisonous fruit. Regardless, Eleanor said, her voice now a sharp, cutting blade, you should have told us. The fact that you didn't proves you have something to hide. It's an insult to our family, to Sophia, and now you're causing a scene. You should be ashamed of yourself. That was the final blow. They were twisting the narrative, making me the villain, the one causing the disruption. But I was not going to back down. Not now. Not ever. I looked at Sophia, who was standing beside me, her face a mixture of shock and support. She met my gaze and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent vote of confidence, a sign that she was on my side. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I had to make a decision, a choice between retreating and fighting. My son's future was at stake. My marriage was at stake. I couldn't just walk away. I am not leaving, I said, my voice clear and firm, echoing across the silent lawn. I have done nothing wrong. My private life is my own. The only people causing a scene here are the two of you. Harold's face contorted with rage. He had not expected me to stand my ground. He was used to people cowering before his wealth and influence. I was not one of those people. You're a guest at our event, he snarled. We have every right to ask you to leave. I am the groom's father, I shot back, a fire now burning in my gut. This is not your event. This is Jacob and Olivia's wedding. You do not own it. You do not own them, and you certainly do not own me. My words hung in the air, a final declaration of war. The silence was broken by the sound of music starting to play. The ceremony was about to begin. The guests, unsure of what to do, began to take their seats. It was a strange, surreal moment, the mundane ritual of a wedding beginning in the midst of a family war. I looked at Jacob, his face still a mix of anger and pride. He gave me a quick nod before walking away to take his place at the altar. I watched him go, a wave of love and fierce protectiveness washing over me. Sophia came to my side, her arm linking with mine. We'll get through this, Ethan, she whispered. I'm with you. Her words were a balm to my soul. I squeezed her hand, a silent promise to fight for her, for us, for our family. I watched as Harold and Eleanor, defeated for the moment, took their seats, their faces still grim with malice. They had failed to get me to leave, but the damage was done. The air was thick with mistrust. The beautiful sunny day was now clouded by the poison they had spread. But I was not going to let them win. I was going to stand tall, with my head held high, and watch my son get married. I was going to be the man he knew I was, the man I had always been, the man they had tried so hard to destroy. The ceremony was a blur of emotions. I sat in the front row, Sophia's hand in mine, trying to focus on the beautiful words being spoken, on the love shining in my son's eyes, but the whispers still reached me, the furtive glances, the cold stares from the Miller's side of the family. It was a constant, low-grade thrum of anxiety, a parasite feeding on the joy of the day. I tried to ignore it all. I watched as Jacob and Olivia exchanged their vows, their voices clear and full of love. I saw the look on my son's face, a mix of sheer joy and a quiet, determined pride. It was the face of a man who knew what he wanted and who wasn't afraid to fight for it. I was so incredibly proud of him. After the ceremony, as the newly married couple walked down the aisle, I stood and cheered. I felt Sophia squeeze my hand, and in that moment, for a brief second, the world fell into place. The noise, the gossip, the animosity, it all faded away. It was just me, my wife, and my son, now a husband. The reception was held in a magnificent ballroom. The decor was elegant. The music was lively, but the atmosphere was strained. The Millers had successfully created a divide. People were either on my side, offering me quick, whispered words of support, or they were with the Millers, offering me cold stares and turning their backs. The chasm between the two families had never been wider. I spent most of the evening with Sophia, Jacob, and Olivia. We stayed in our small circle, a haven from the storm swirling around us. Jacob pulled me aside at one point, his face serious. "Dad," he said, his voice low, "I'm sorry about all this. It's not right. What they're doing. It's just so unfair." "Don't worry about it, son," I said, my heart swelling with love. "This is your day. Don't let them ruin it for you. Your happiness is all that matters." "It does matter," he insisted. "You matter. You're my dad, and I love you." I felt a lump form in my throat. I pulled him into a hug, holding him tight. This was the moment that mattered. This was the truth. Their lies, their cruelty, none of it mattered in the face of my son's love. The evening wore on, and I found myself needing to get some fresh air. I stepped out onto a balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief. I looked out at the city lights, a million tiny stars in the dark. I felt an overwhelming exhaustion. The day had been a battle, and I was weary to my bones. A soft voice broke the silence. "Ethan?" I turned to see Sophia standing in the doorway, a look of concern on her face. She walked over to me and wrapped her arms around my waist, resting her head on my back. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I'm just tired, Sophia," I said, a sigh escaping my lips. "I'm so tired of fighting. I just wanted this to be a beautiful day for Jacob." "I know," she said, her voice full of empathy. "And it was, Ethan. It was beautiful. Don't let them take that away from you. We'll get through this. Together." Her words were a comfort, a lifeline in the stormy sea. I turned around and wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. I knew she was right. We were a team, and as long as we had each other, we could face anything. Later, as the reception was winding down, Harold approached me, his face a mask of false concern. "Ethan, a word," he said, pulling me away from the crowd. "We need to talk about this situation." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice firm. "You made a scene. You tried to ruin my son's wedding. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you lecture me." "Don't be childish," he snapped. "The fact remains you have a secret child. This is a problem, and we need to deal with it, for Sophia's sake." "My relationship with Sophia is none of your business," I said, my voice rising. "You had your chance to be reasonable. You chose to be malicious. Now you'll have to deal with the consequences." He looked at me, a cold fury in his eyes. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you can just walk away from this with your head held high. You're wrong, Ethan. This isn't over. Not by a long shot." His words were a chilling promise. I knew he was right. This was just the beginning. They would find another way to attack me, another way to try and tear my family apart. But I was ready. I had my son's love, my wife's support. They could throw whatever they wanted at me. I was ready to fight. I looked back at the ballroom, at the happy faces, at Jacob and Olivia dancing together, bathed in the soft, romantic glow of the lights. I felt a surge of resolve. I wasn't fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for them. I was fighting for my family's peace, for their happiness. I was fighting to protect the most important people in my life from the poison of the Millers. And I would not back down. The day after the wedding was a strange one, a quiet, tense period of reflection. The high of the event had dissipated, leaving behind the residue of the conflict. Sophia and I had decided to stay a few extra days in the city to give ourselves some space from the Millers. We had a long, quiet breakfast in our hotel room, the silence between us more of a comfort than a strain. "They won't stop, you know," Sophia said, her voice soft as she stirred her coffee. "My parents, they never do. They'll find another way to get to you." "I know," I said, my gaze fixed on the city skyline. "But I'm not worried about them anymore. I'm worried about you and Jacob. I don't want this to affect your relationships with them." Sophia shook her head. "My relationship with them has been a mess for years, Ethan. They've always tried to control me, to dictate my life. I've just been too afraid to stand up to them. But now I see what's at stake. They crossed a line. They hurt the people I love. They tried to hurt you and Jacob. I won't forgive that." A wave of love washed over me. This was the woman I had married, the one who had brought so much light into my life. She was a fighter, a warrior in her own right. "What do we do?" I asked. "We go home," she said, her voice firm. "We talk to Jacob and Olivia. We clear the air. We show them that their lies have no power over us." And so we did. We drove back home, the silence in the car punctuated by the unspoken promise to face whatever came next, together. When we got to our house, the quiet was a welcome relief. It was a space that was ours, a sanctuary from the world. Later that evening, we had a video call with Jacob and Olivia. They were on their honeymoon, but they had insisted on talking to us. "We're so sorry about everything, Dad," Jacob said, his face etched with concern. "They're just... I don't even know what to call them anymore." "Don't apologize, son," I said. "You have nothing to apologize for. You stood up for me. You stood up for what was right. That's all I could ever ask for." "We're all so proud of you, Ethan," Olivia said, her voice warm and sincere. "You handled it with so much grace. And what they said about Lily, it was horrible. I can't believe they would stoop so low." I felt a lump in my throat. "She's a good kid, Lily. I should have told you all about her sooner. But it was a painful part of my life. I didn't want to bring that kind of darkness into your world." "It's not darkness, Dad," Jacob said. "It's a testament to the kind of man you are. You took in a little girl who had nowhere to go. That's not a secret to be ashamed of. That's a badge of honor." The conversation was a catharsis. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The air was clear, the trust was solid, the Millers had failed. Their lies had not driven a wedge between me and my son. If anything, they had strengthened our bond. Over the next few weeks, the whispers began to fade. The Millers' circle of influence was a small one, and the truth, once spoken, had a way of spreading. The people who mattered, my friends, my colleagues, the people who knew me and knew my character, did not believe the lies. They offered me quiet words of support, a knowing look, a comforting hand on the shoulder. I even had a conversation with Lily. I told her what had happened, how the Millers had used her as a weapon against me. I was prepared for her to be angry, to feel used, but her response was a surprise. "Dad," she said, her voice calm and steady, "I'm so sorry. I can't believe they would do that, but don't you dare be ashamed of me. You saved me. You gave me a home, a life. I'm proud to be your daughter, and if they want to use that against you, then let them. It just shows the kind of people they are." Her words were a final, powerful affirmation. I was not a man with a secret to be ashamed of. I was a man who had done the right thing, a man who had kept a promise, a man who had shown compassion and love. The Millers, for their part, went silent. They made no attempt to contact us. Their silence was a different kind of weapon, a low-grade Cold War. They had lost the first battle, but the war was far from over. I knew they would be plotting, waiting for their next chance to strike. But I was no longer afraid. I had my family. I had my truth. I had everything I needed to face whatever they threw at me next. The quiet after the storm was a period of rebuilding, of strengthening the foundations of my life, preparing for the next assault. I was ready. The silence from the Millers didn't last. A few weeks after the wedding, I received a strange email. It was from a law firm, a formal letter on official letterhead. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was a request for an urgent meeting to discuss a family matter of great importance. The sender was Mr. Miller's personal attorney. I showed it to Sophia. Her face paled. "This is a new low, even for them," she said, her voice a low growl. "They're trying to use legal means to intimidate you." "What do you think they want?" I asked. "I don't know," she said, her brow furrowed, "but whatever it is, it's not good. They're trying to gain the upper hand, to regain the control they lost at the wedding." I consulted my own lawyer, a kind, no-nonsense woman named Clara, who had helped me with the legal details of my business. She advised me to go to the meeting, but to be cautious. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything," she told me. "Just listen to what they have to say, and don't go alone. Take Sophia with you." The meeting was held in a sterile, modern office building downtown. The conference room was all glass and polished wood, a cold, impersonal space. Harold and Eleanor were already there, seated across a large table, their faces grim and unyielding. Harold's attorney, a man with a sharp suit and a sharper gaze, sat beside them. We took our seats, and a tense silence fell over the room. The attorney, Mr. Thompson, was the first to speak. "Mr. Thompson," he began, his voice a smooth, practiced cadence. "My clients, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, are concerned about the future of their daughter. They believe her marriage to you is ill-advised. They believe you're not a suitable partner for her," I scoffed. "And based on what?" I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "The lies you spread at my son's wedding?" Harold's face tightened. "That was a difficult situation," he said, the words a hollow parody of an apology. "But it was born out of genuine concern." "Concern?" Sophia interjected, her voice sharp. "You tried to ruin my husband's reputation on our son's wedding day. That's not concern, that's cruelty." "Sophia, dear, calm down," Eleanor said, a fake sweetness in her voice. "We're just trying to resolve this." "Resolve what?" I said. "There's nothing to resolve. Your lies failed. Our family is stronger than ever. So what is this about?" Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "My clients believe that due to Mr. Miller's significant financial contributions to your son's wedding, they should have more say in his life. And they are concerned that your past will tarnish their family name." I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. They were using money as a weapon. They were trying to buy their way into my family's life, to buy control. "Are you serious?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You think you can buy your way into our lives? You think a check gives you the right to dictate how we live?" "It's a matter of principle, Mr. Thompson," Harold said, his voice cold. "We believe Sophia is entitled to a better life. We are prepared to offer you a financial settlement in exchange for a clean break. We believe it's in everyone's best interest if you two dissolve this marriage." The words hung in the air, a shocking, outrageous proposition. I felt Sophia's hand squeeze mine under the table, her knuckles white. They were trying to bribe me, to buy my love, to buy my marriage. "You're out of your mind," I said, a furious laugh escaping my lips. "You think I'm going to sell my marriage, sell my wife's happiness, for what, a couple of dollars?" "It's a substantial offer," Harold said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Enough to set you up for life, enough to finally get out of that dirty garage of yours." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Get out," I said, my voice a low, furious growl. "Get out of my sight. You will never, ever talk to me like that again. You will never again try to use your money to hurt my family. This meeting is over." Harold looked stunned. He had not expected this reaction. He was used to people bending to his will. I wasn't one of them. I was a man who had built his life from scratch, and I wouldn't let them tear it down. Sophia stood up beside me, her eyes blazing with fury. "You can take your money and shove it, Dad," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I am so disgusted with you. You've always tried to control me, but I'm an adult now. I am a married woman. I love my husband, and you will never, ever come between us. This is the last time you will ever try to bribe or manipulate him. Do you understand me?" Her words were a powerful declaration of independence, a line in the sand. Harold and Eleanor looked at their daughter, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. They had lost control. Their money, their power, their lies, none of it had worked. We walked out of the office, the silence in the hallway a testament to our victory. We didn't say a word until we were in the car. Sophia turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry you have to go through this." "Don't be sorry," I said, pulling her into a hug. "We did it, Sophia. We won. We showed them that they can't buy us, they can't break us, we're a team." Her head was resting on my chest, and I could feel the rhythmic beat of her heart. It was a steady, constant rhythm, a testament to our love, our strength, our resilience. The Millers had tried to shatter us, but all they had done was make our bond stronger. The war was far from over, but we had won a crucial battle. The next day, I received a call from an old acquaintance, a mutual friend of mine and Mark, Lily's biological father. His name was David, and he had been there for me after Mark's death. He had also been one of the few people who knew the full story of Lily's adoption. "Ethan," he said, his voice sounding strained, "I don't know how to say this, but the Millers contacted me." My heart sank. I had known they wouldn't give up, but this was a new, despicable tactic. They were now reaching out to the few people who knew the truth, likely in an attempt to twist the story and find a weakness to exploit. "What did they want?" I asked, my voice tight. "They asked me about Lily," David said. "They asked if I knew about your secret child." I told them the truth, of course. I told them what a good man you are, what a wonderful thing you did by taking her in. But they didn't listen. They kept pushing, trying to find some dirt, some scandal. I felt a surge of gratitude for David. He had stood up for me, just as I knew he would. But the knowledge of what the Millers were doing, of their relentless pursuit of a way to hurt me, was a heavy burden. "I'm sorry, David," I said. "I never wanted to put you in that position." "Don't be," he said. "I'm happy to stand up for you. But Ethan, they're relentless. They even tried to contact Lily herself. They sent her a letter, offering to help her with her unfit father. She was so upset. My blood ran cold. They had gone too far. They had crossed the line from a personal vendetta to a malicious attack on an innocent young woman, my daughter. I felt a primal protective fury rise within me. "Are you serious?" I said, my voice a low growl. "They tried to contact her." "Yes," David said. "I told her to just ignore it, to not respond. But I'm worried, Ethan. They're not going to stop. You have to do something." I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I was no longer fighting for my own dignity. I was fighting to protect my daughter, to protect her peace of mind from the poisonous malice of the Millers. I couldn't just sit back and let them do this. I walked into the living room where Sophia was reading a book. "Sophia," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "They contacted Lily. They're trying to manipulate her, to turn her against me." Sophia's book fell from her hands. "That's it," she said, her face a mask of furious determination. "I am done. I am done with them. I am going to confront them. Right now." "No," I said, pulling her back. "This isn't your fight, Sophia. This is my fight. I'm not going to let them use you as a pawn. I'm going to go see them myself." "Ethan, no," she said, her voice pleading. "They're just going to try and hurt you again." "I know," I said, "but this is different. They have gone after my child. They have crossed a line that I cannot let stand. I have to make them understand, once and for all, that they are not to go near her. Ever." I called Harold and demanded to see him. To my surprise, he agreed, and we arranged to meet at a neutral public location, a coffee shop downtown. I knew it was a risk, but I couldn't let my anger fester. I had to face them, to put an end to this. I walked into the coffee shop, my heart pounding with a mix of fury and resolve. Harold was already there, a smug look on his face. He was not alone. Eleanor was with him. They had brought an audience. "Ethan," Harold said, a false pleasantness in his voice. "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable. We can discuss this like civilized people." "I'm not here to be civilized, Harold," I said, my voice low and firm. "I'm here to tell you something, and I'm only going to say it once. You are to leave Lily alone, do you hear me? You are not to contact her. You are not to talk to her. You are not to mention her to anyone. She is off limits." Harold scoffed. "And why should we listen to you? You're hiding something. We're just trying to get to the bottom of it." "There is nothing to get to the bottom of," I roared, my voice echoing through the quiet coffee shop. "She is the daughter of my best friend who died. I gave her a home, a life. That's it. It's a story of love and compassion, something you clearly know nothing about." Eleanor, ever the manipulator, leaned forward. "A man with a secret child, a man who hides things from his family. What kind of person is that, Ethan?" My fury, which I had been trying to control, finally boiled over. I slammed my hand on the table, making the coffee cups rattle. "I am a man who kept a promise," I said, my voice a thunderous growl. "I kept a promise to a dying man, a promise to look after his daughter, a promise to love her and protect her. And I will continue to do so. And if you ever go near her again, I will not be a man of compassion. I will be a man of wrath. Do you understand me? Leave her alone." The patrons of the coffee shop had now turned to stare, their faces a mix of shock and intrigue. Harold and Eleanor, for the first time, looked genuinely rattled. They had not expected this level of anger, this level of raw, protective fury. I looked at them, my eyes burning with a fire I didn't know I possessed. "This is not a game anymore," I said, my voice now a low, dangerous whisper. "You have crossed a line. You have come after my child, and for that I will not forgive you. Ever. Now get out of my sight." I walked away, leaving them sitting in stunned silence, their carefully constructed facade of respectability shattered. I had lost my temper. I had made a scene, but I had also made my point. I would not let them hurt my family, not ever. I had a long, hard road ahead, but for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of peace. I had stood up for what was right. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. The confrontation at the coffee shop, while a public display of anger, was also a turning point. It became a story in itself, whispered through the city's social circles, not as a story of my supposed secret, but as a story of my raw, protective love for my daughter. The truth finally was beginning to win. A few days later, I received a call from a reporter from the local newspaper. She had heard about the incident at the coffee shop and wanted to do a story. I was hesitant at first. I didn't want to sensationalize the situation, to turn my family's private turmoil into a public spectacle. But then I realized this was an opportunity, a chance to tell my story in my own words, without the filter of the Miller's lies. I agreed to the interview, and the reporter, a sharp, kind woman named Sarah, came to my house. I sat across from her, a sense of quiet determination settling over me. I told her everything. The story of Mark, the promise I made to him, the beautiful life I had built with Jacob, the love I had found with Sophia, the Millers' campaign of lies, and their final, desperate act of malice against Lily. I spoke with a quiet passion, my voice full of a father's love and a man's righteous anger. Sarah listened, her face a mask of empathy and professional interest. She asked a few pointed questions, but mostly she just let me talk. By the end of it, I felt a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The truth, when spoken aloud, was a powerful thing. The article came out a few days later. The headline was simple and powerful: "A Father's Love, a story of adoption, malice, and unconditional love." The story was a raw, honest account of everything that had happened. It painted the Millers as the villains, the cruel, manipulative people they were, and me as the hero, a man who had done the right thing, a man who had fought for his family. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. My phone began to ring off the hook. Friends, family, even old acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years called to express their support. My colleagues at the garage came in with the newspaper, their faces full of admiration. "Ethan," one of them said, "we always knew you were a good man, but this is a different level. What you did for that girl, it's incredible." I was humbled by their support, but the most important reaction came from my family. Jacob and Olivia called, their voices filled with pride. "Dad, the article is amazing," Jacob said. "The whole world knows the truth now. They can't lie anymore. You won." "You did the right thing, Ethan," Olivia said. "You didn't hide. You stood up for yourself and your family. That's a true measure of a man." Sophia came to me, the newspaper in her hand, her eyes shining with tears. "You're my hero, Ethan," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You told the world who you are, and I'm so proud to be your wife." I hugged her, holding her close, a feeling of deep peace settling over me. The Millers had tried to destroy me, to make me a man to be ashamed of, but their lies had backfired. They had inadvertently given me a platform to tell my story, to show the world who I really was. The backlash against the Millers was swift and severe. Their names, once synonymous with wealth and social status, were now tainted with the reputation of being cruel, heartless manipulators. Their friends began to distance themselves. Their business associates began to pull away. Their meticulously crafted world of social influence began to crumble. I saw Harold at a store a few days later. He saw me, and his face, once a mask of smug arrogance, was now a portrait of defeat and shame. He looked away, his gaze fixed on the floor, and hurried past me. I felt no triumph, just a profound sense of sadness. They had brought this on themselves. Their own malice had become their undoing. The war was over. I had won. But it wasn't a victory of power or influence. It was a victory of truth, of love, of the quiet, unwavering strength of a man who had fought for his family. I had stood my ground, protected my loved ones, and in the process, I had found a deeper sense of who I was. I was a father, a husband, a man who had done the right thing no matter the cost, and that, in the end, was all that mattered. Weeks turned into months, and the public scandal around the Millers slowly began to fade, replaced by a quiet, pervasive social ostracism. They were no longer the power couple they once were, their influence having been replaced by a lingering reputation for cruelty. My family, on the other hand, flourished. The public support, the shared experience of standing up to a bully, had brought us closer than ever. One afternoon I was at my garage working on a car when an old familiar car pulled up. It was Harold's Mercedes. I froze, my stomach clenching. I hadn't seen him since the embarrassing encounter at the store, and a part of me hoped I would never have to see him again. He got out of the car, looking different. He was no longer dressed in his usual pristine suit. He was wearing a simple jacket and a pair of worn trousers. He looked older, smaller, defeated. He walked over to me, his shoulders slumped. He didn't say anything, just stood there, looking at the tools in my hand, at the oil on my face. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words. Finally he spoke, his voice low and raspy, a far cry from the booming arrogance I was used to. I'm not here to cause trouble, Ethan, he said. I'm here to apologize. I stopped what I was doing, my hand frozen on a wrench. I looked at him, my eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. But there was none. Only a profound, heavy sadness. What? I said. The word barely a whisper. I was wrong, he said, his eyes fixed on the ground. I was a fool. I let my pride, my arrogance get the better of me. I was jealous. I saw how much Sophia loved you, how much Jacob respected you, and it drove me insane. I couldn't stand the fact that a man like you, a man who worked with his hands, had the love and respect of my family. I had always tried to buy their affection, to control them with money and influence. But you had it naturally, and I hated you for it. His words were a confession, a raw, painful admission of his own failures. I just stood there, speechless, listening. The article. It was a wake-up call, he continued. It showed me what everyone else saw. A cruel, bitter old man who was trying to tear his own family apart. I lost everything, Ethan. My friends, my reputation. My own daughter won't talk to me. And it was all because of my own stupid, selfish pride. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the man underneath the facade of wealth and power. He was just a man, a broken man, full of regret. I'm sorry, Ethan, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I am so sorry for what I did to you, to Sophia, to Jacob, and especially to Lily. I had no right to go after her. She is an innocent, and I will live with that shame for the rest of my life. I looked at him, a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me. The anger, the rage, the resentment, it was all there, but it was now tempered by a profound sense of pity. This wasn't the victory I had envisioned. It was a somber, painful resolution. I accept your apology, Harold, I said, my voice quiet. But I can't speak for my family. You'll have to make your peace with them on your own. He nodded, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. I know, he said, and I will. I needed you to know. I needed to say it. I am not a good man, Ethan. But I am trying. I am trying to be better. He turned and walked back to his car. I stood there watching him go, a profound sense of finality settling over me. The war was not just over, it was resolved. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, sorrowful confession. I knew that this was not the end of the story. The scars from their cruelty would linger. The trust would take time to rebuild. But a door had been opened. A path to reconciliation, however long and difficult, had been laid out. And as I went back to work, I felt a new sense of peace. The storm had passed, and the sun finally was beginning to shine. Months turned into a year. The quiet apology from Harold was a small, fragile seed that slowly began to grow. It wasn't an immediate fix. Sophia was hesitant at first, her trust having been shattered by her parents' betrayal. But Harold, and even Eleanor, continued to try. They would send small, heartfelt letters, not with money or bribes, but with simple words of regret and a genuine desire to mend the family. One day, Sophia's phone rang. It was her mother. Sophia looked at me, a question in her eyes. I just nodded. It was her decision. She took the call, and I watched as her face softened, the anger slowly being replaced by a hesitant, wounded kind of hope. It was the first step. They met a few weeks later for a quiet lunch, just the three of them. There were no big dramatic apologies, no grand gestures, just a quiet, honest conversation about the past, about the pain, and about the long, difficult road to forgiveness. They talked about their own fears and insecurities, their mistakes, and they talked about me. I wasn't there, but I was the reason for their reunion, the central figure in their broken family that they now wanted to fix. The reconciliation was slow and deliberate. It wasn't about me. It was about Sophia and her parents, and the years of control and manipulation that they needed to address. I gave them their space, my support a silent, constant presence in the background. My focus was on my family, my wife and my son, and the beautiful, peaceful life we had built. Jacob and Olivia had their own struggles with the situation, but they eventually began to see the effort Harold and Eleanor were making. They saw the sincerity in their attempts to apologize, to make things right. They saw that their parents were not just a caricature of cruel, wealthy people, but human beings, flawed and full of regret. The real test came a year and a half after the wedding. Olivia and Jacob announced they were having a baby, our first grandchild. The news was met with immense joy, but also with a quiet apprehension. Would the Millers try to get involved? Would they try to buy their way into the baby's life? But they didn't. They didn't offer money. They didn't try to take over. Instead, they came to us, to Sophia and me, and with a quiet humility they asked if they could be a part of the baby's life. They asked for our permission, our blessing. It was a gesture of respect, a recognition of our place in the family. I looked at Sophia, at her tear-filled eyes, and I knew she had already forgiven them, but the decision was hers. She looked at her parents, and then she looked at me. I gave her a small, imperceptible nod. She took a deep breath. "Yes," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Yes, you can be a part of their life, but on our terms, on our family's terms. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more trying to buy your way in. Just love. That's all we ask for." The baby, a beautiful little girl named Grace, was born a few months later. On the day she came home from the hospital, Harold and Eleanor were waiting outside the house. They didn't come in. They just stood there, waiting, a large bouquet of flowers in their hands. They had not been invited inside. This was a new beginning, and it was going to be on our terms. Sophia walked outside with Grace in her arms. She showed her parents their granddaughter. Eleanor cried, tears streaming down her face. Harold simply looked at the baby, a look of profound, humbled love on his face. He was no longer the man I had once hated. He was a man who had faced his own darkness and was now desperately trying to find his way back into the light. I walked over to him, my hand outstretched. He took it, his grip surprisingly firm. "Welcome to the family, Harold," I said. He looked at me, his eyes full of a grateful, sorrowful light. "Thank you, Ethan," he said. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for showing me what a real man looks like." He had found his truth, and I had found mine. The man who had been a mechanic, a single father, a man who had kept a promise to a dying friend. That man was now a grandfather, a husband, a son-in-law. And he was standing tall, not because of his money or his influence, but because of his love, his truth, and his unwavering, quiet strength. The past was not forgotten, but it was no longer a storm. It was a quiet memory, a reminder of a battle won, a journey taken, and a family that was finally, truly whole.